After generating over 7,500 unique images using Midjourney, it seems like a good idea to share some lessons learned and my thought process for nailing the perfect image as quickly and effortlessly as possible. So here's my 6-part system for bringing an idea to life. And as I go through this, I'll throw in a few other tips and tricks, as well as pointing out some pitfalls that can easily derail your creative process. Using this 6-step process, you can get surprisingly good results from Midjourney. So the first step is to come up with an idea. You really need to start with some idea of what you're looking for. It can be as simple as a sentence or a short description. It can be a reference image, a phrase, or a scene you're imagining. I've thought of a couple things that I was thinking we could use today. Sad girl alone in a dark city. And I need a thumbnail for this video. So we're also going to look for a bald man caught behind the curtain, because I think I'm going to go with the title Midjourney Behind the Curtain for this episode. So those are going to be our initial starting ideas. So I'll just fire these off real quick and just get it started on something so we can see where we're starting. I'm going to assume that you know how to get Midjourney up and running and that you have access to it. But anyway, with just a basic idea, we're already getting some pictures here. This is the sad girl alone in a dark city. And this is actually kind of cool. I like this one where she's up high. It's got the very Spider-Man, Batman kind of vibe going. I like this one where there's obviously a younger girl and she just looks like she's not in a good way. And here we have somebody, maybe she's just a daily work commuter on a gray, drizzly day, just lost in the crowd. And here's a more contemplative girl. Anyway, it gives you some good stuff, right, without really working on it too much. But we want to refine these, and that's what the rest of the process is for. But that's really the first step, is just come up with an idea. So step 2 is to start to identify descriptive keywords that will help Midjourney to put together something more specific, something more in alignment with your vision. Sometimes you'll have a very clear idea from the beginning. You'll have a number of words and phrases bobbing around in your head. You can just use those. Other times you might need to brainstorm on this for, a few minutes. So what are some keywords that go with these? This girl is sad. She's dejected. She's slumped over. She's crying. Tears streaking down her face. And she's alone. She's lonely. She's isolated. Maybe she's afraid. Maybe she's frantic, wide-eyed. And she might not be. That we'll see if we want to go with that emotion or not. Maybe he's frowning. Maybe he's glaring. See, he's behind the curtain. We've kind of already got that. It's probably an electronic control booth. It's a hiding place. Maybe he's hiding. Dark, shadowy. So those are some good descriptive words. Now we're going to do imagine a girl alone in a dark city. And I'm also going to put this AR on the end. That tells it the aspect ratio. And I want to make these initial pictures, I'm pointing at them. You can't see that because I'm pointing with my finger. These initial pictures came out square. That's the default. But I want something more rectangular that's really the size and shape of the screen. And then I'm going to do the same thing with our bald friend here. A bald, middle-aged man. Well, I'll just leave all of those words in there. Why not? Also going to give this one the AR 16:9. All right, so here's our next iteration of the girl. So first, it came up with some very generic artwork of a girl kind of capturing the idea of darkness and being alone. Now we have a lot more descriptive words. We've got more emotion in it. And it's come up with some good stuff. Like these look like real photographs or drawings. This could be a snapshot from a movie. Actually, I really like this image here. I like the bokeh in the background. I like how you can kind of see the shine, the moisture on her face. Like that's really good. And I think this one has some great emotion for a drawing. So let's take both of those. We're going to upscale them. And here's our bald guy. Ooh, look at this. Now we've got a more interesting vision. But in all of these, looks like here's a person who is annoyed. They've been discovered. They don't like the interruption. This guy looks like he's afraid of the sound. Maybe something's about to explode. And this guy's just like, what? Like somebody's just requested of him to do something he did not want to do. So we're getting better images already just by adding those more descriptive keywords. Oh, and what did, I was going to try the Chat GPT prompt here. So this one is probably going to give us something crazy. Let's see what it does. And we'll see what they come up with. So let's take a closer look at this one. That definitely has an illustration or comic book quality to it. And that one's just very striking. Like this would make a good thumbnail. But anyway, that's our step 2 is getting these keywords, getting this description together. And a couple notes on this. One is grammar doesn't really matter. You don't have to use complete sentences. I don't think commas or punctuation have anything to do with how the AI interprets your request. I will usually put commas in things to try and separate ideas or separate lists because that's how I'm thinking about it. But once you've got the keywords and stuff identified, now it's time to really structure a prompt. So I was just throwing some kind of random descriptions in here, but really when you give it a prompt, there's 3 key elements that you want to have. First, you need to tell it what kind of image are you looking for. Are you looking for a drawing, a painting, a photograph? And you can even be more specific than that. Instead of a photograph, do you want a studio portrait photo? Do you want a travel photo? Do you want a Polaroid? And the second thing is the subject. So obviously here our subject is the girl, and that subject includes the description of what they look like. You can include elements of their clothing, things like that. But you really want to tell it what you want in the picture. Do you want a person, a building, an animal? What do you want? And you can also give it actions. So you can have the person doing something specific. You can give your subject some verbs. You can tell it what the subject is doing. And then the last part is to put your subject somewhere. You want to put them in an environment. But you can specify indoors, outdoors, in a castle, in a forest, in a formal garden, at a water park, all sorts of details you can throw in there. At the beach, on an inner tube, surrounded by sharks. And so here's a girl alone without any context. So it didn't put her in a city. You notice it didn't put in the dark city in the background. It just sort of put her in a very generic plain background. But some of these are nice pictures. Like this is a nice image. I love the color on this. I like that it's just a silhouette. I like the bokeh on this one. This looks like a nicely done night photo where they just really got the silhouette and really captured the lighting in the background. And I also like the color balance on this, how you've got reds and blues. Like that's a good picture. I like that picture. Key parts of what we want in a prompt. We want to tell it what it is, what kind of style it's going to be, what kind of medium is the image going to be in. We want to tell it about the subject. What do they look like? What are they doing? And then we want to give it a place where they're doing whatever you want in the image. Actually, I'm going to do one of the man too. So then once you've figured out your prompt, then you can really start playing around with some of the more advanced features and thinking about other elements of composition. So Midjourney actually has a variety of different commands you can put at the end of a prompt. And they all start with this dash dash. And then they'll usually have some kind of abbreviation. So AR is aspect ratio. That's one you can use. So I told this one to do an aspect ratio of 16:9, which is good for widescreen formats. So television, YouTube, that kind of thing. But if I were to flip that around and say 9:16, it's going to give me a narrow, tall photo, more like what you would see on a phone, and more like what you would expect to see on TikTok or Instagram, for example. So you specify the shape of it. A trick that I like to do when I'm trying to animate something or give the illusion of it being animated is I'll actually make something that's really wide. So let's say I go 48:9. That's going to give me a very wide but not very tall image. And then what I can do is I can actually blow it up to where the height takes up the whole screen, but you can't see the whole width of the image all at once. And then I'll just kind of have the image pan through the scene, which gives this illusion of it being an animated image or an animated scene, which is great for doing music or video backgrounds. And this was just for example, but these would all kind of look more like cell phone pictures. All right, so here's the one where I'm showing kind of the wide thing. So this any of these would work for what I'm talking about, but I'll kind of show you with I think that bottom one. I could start, just framing this part of the street and then actually scroll slowly across to where you see the woman. Or show her here and then pan away this way so it kind of gives the illusion of she's moving off camera. And then you just see the street that's empty. Well, that's a trick you can do with aspect ratio. Some other things, I'm not going to go into them in this video, but you can give it a style setting, so you can kind of tell it how much to stylize the photo. Another one I use a lot is a --C, which is for chaos. And you can give it a number, and it will tell it kind of how much variation you want in the pictures it generates. So in the quad, you might get, like, these are all fairly similar color tone, fairly similar composition. Actually, maybe I'll even just show that here. And I'm going to make that maybe not quite as wide so we can see more detail. But then I'll do a chaos of like 36. I think this number goes from 1 to 50. But that should give us a wider variety of images when it generates those. So you can play around with those kind of commands. But aspect ratio is one I use on almost every image I generate because that's something I want to control. And I rarely have a use for the default square images that it generates. So this ended up running quite a bit longer than I expected. So I'll wrap this one up here, and I think there will be a second part if people are interested. But essentially we went through the 5 steps, which were to identify your concept, step 1. Step 2, look at keywords that are associated with that concept to describe it better and to give the AI more to work with. Then step 3 is constructing your prompt. You want to have a prompt that's made out of 3 parts. The first part being the type of image that you want, the type of media you want it on, the style that you want to use. The second part is the subject, where you describe what you want the focus of the picture to be, including a description of them, any actions you want them to be taking. And then the last part is the environment that you want the subject to be in, inside, outside, in a particular era, in a particular kind of place, in a particular situation, so on and so forth. And once you have the prompt, then you start looking at some of the more advanced features, some of the commands you might want to add to it, such as the aspect ratio. You also want to see if you want to add a more specific style or inspiration from a specific artist. And then once you start getting those results, then you just iterate through this. And that's really step 5, is to look at your initial results and start making adjustments. And then step 6, which we're not really going to get to in this video, is using some of the other controls that are available in Midjourney to zoom or pan or in other ways manipulate the image that Midjourney has generated. And by going through those 6 steps, you'll end up with an image or even several images that will be close to what you were thinking of and quite possibly will exceed your expectations. And you should be able to use them for whatever purpose you're turning to Midjourney for. So as you experiment with this, feel free to share your experiences here. And if you have questions that you come up with as you're working with it, feel free to drop those in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe. And the last bit of advice, and probably the most important, this isn't a step, but it's just a mindset, is have fun with this. It can do amazing things, and it will surprise you. It will surprise you in good ways. It will surprise you in bad ways. But when it surprises you in a good way and you get an unexpected and just amazing result, it will blow your mind, and you'll probably keep working on it for another hour. And just continue to explore and create and let your imagination run wild.